Welcome back. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Lights and Sirens podcast with your host, Bernie Robinson. If you joined us for episode 1, you heard my story, bits and pieces of my story. And I thought, before I get into bringing on guests, which I have plenty of guests lined up to tell their stories, I had some more things I needed to share. So let's take it back. Like I told you before, I started in EMS, 18-year-old kid, fresh out of high school, learned how to, went to EMT school at the request of my father, who is now a retired FDNY EMS lieutenant. You'll hear more about that later. Came out of class and got a job right out the gate. All right, so I worked at a company which is now closed, but back then it was known as Metropolitan Ambulance Company. Over the years, it became, different formations of that company came about, which ended up becoming TransCare, which was pretty much a large EMS provider in this region. And then ultimately, due to some bad business dealings, I guess, that company just abruptly closed back in, I believe, February 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And about 1,000 people lost their job overnight. They were like out on calls and then all called to our return to base, and that was it. Doors were locked. So one day I'm looking forward to having some guests on to tell us about that whole situation, what that was like. But I did, like I said, I worked there back in the old days, right? So we're talking 1989, 1990, I was there. Interesting job, interesting time. At that time, that company was strictly transport. So, your nursing home discharges, your facility to facility kind of things, discharges home. Pretty much those were the calls that we did, which was fine for somebody starting out as an EMT. At that time, I was the EMT, and I was assigned a driver who was not an EMT. So here I am, a 19-year-old kid, first time in an ambulance, and I have a guy who's a driver, right? So that was very interesting. And I'm in charge, right? So I'm a 19-year-old kid. I'm in charge. This guy's probably 10 years older than me. And I had one partner at the time. I worked ambulance 195. And I had a partner, I won't say his name, but it was very, very interesting character, let's just say. And I recall, one of the things I recall is every Friday night we would end up in Upper Manhattan for a call. Usually we'd go to Mount Sinai, which I think is up like 101 Street or something like that in Madison. We'd end up at that hospital pretty much like clockwork at the end of the shift on Friday nights around 6 or 7 p.m. And then we'd come back from the base, and this partner would say, hey, what's my magic number? Over the radio. He'd pick up the radio mic, say, hey, guys, what's my magic number? And then a few minutes later, dispatch would come over, hey, your number's 8. I don't know what that means. I'm just writing in my paperwork or whatever I'm doing, listening to the radio as we're heading back to base. And every week we'd pull over on 116th Street, somewhere like that in East Harlem. He would put on a camouflage jacket, disappear for about 10 minutes, and return to base. So one day he does that, and I'm looking, I don't know what's going on. And we're heading on the Brooklyn Bridge, and he starts to put this package in my EMT bag. So I'm like, what are you doing? What is that? And then later on, I found out that he was making, let's just say, pickups for certain people back at the garage, and the magic number was the number of packages that people needed for their recreational activities. So that was definitely, eye-opening experience as a kid working in an ambulance, that was something that happened. And this particular partner, I had a lot of crazy experiences like that with this guy. One night we were behind the base somewhere in Canarsie somewhere, and he picked up a prostitute. And for some reason, we were like, working late that night. He pulls over somewhere behind some alley, jumps in the back of the ambulance. Once again, I'm just reading or listening to my Walkman at the time, and the ambulance starts bouncing up and down. I'm like, okay, this is interesting, you know? So I look in the back. I'm like, bro, you all right back there? But yeah, he was okay. He was okay, you know, finished what he was doing and went on about his... We finished up the shift, went back for base again. I also had my first cardiac arrest at this company with this same partner, okay? So I already told you, you know, the kind of things he was doing. I'd actually recall one time having to, every house we went to, he would always have to go to the bathroom. So I'm like, bro, every house we go in, what is that? Whatever. That's him. I don't know. So one time he came out, and I literally had to tell him, dude, you have to go back in there and wipe off your nose because you have white stuff all around your nose. Then the light bulb went off. Like, okay, now I know what the problem is here. This is why he's, so hyper and erratic. I was a little slow, but I caught on after a while. So anyway, go back to my first cardiac arrest. Now remember, I'm like 19, maybe 20 at this time. I'm in the ambulance by myself. It was late at night. We pick up this elderly female at a residence, I believe. And usually when we do that, it's because they want to go to a specific hospital that's usually further away than where the local 911 agency would take them. So they will call a proprietary ambulance service to take them the further distance. So it's an elderly man, I'm sorry, and his family's there. They're crying. He's very, very sick. We load him in the ambulance. I got tunnel vision. I'm just looking at, oh man, this guy's really sick. I don't know what's going on. My first real call here. I'm by myself, and the family's in the back of the ambulance. I'm sitting on the bench across from the stretcher. The son, I guess, was sitting where there's a small chair called the captain's chair that's right behind the driver and behind the stretcher. So he's sitting there, and I guess we hit a bump. Well, I'm reaching for the oxygen mask to put on them, and the son smacks my hand, and he's like, "Watch what you're doing, boy." And that right there was kind of a red flag that, okay, this call is probably going to go left. I don't know what's going on, but I'm focusing on what's going on with this patient right here. I'm going to kind of disregard that this man just referred to me as a boy. That's a whole nother street we could go down. So now I'm calling the patient's name. He goes unresponsive. He's barely breathing, really pale. I might have been like an end-stage kind of situation, end-stage cancer or something like that. I can't really remember that detail, but I'm calling out his name. I'm looking for the equipment. I'm grabbing the equipment to help him breathe. He's gone. He's out of it, and my partner is freaking out now. The family's starting to freak out in the ambulance. My partner, I told you already what his deal was. He's freaking out more. He's driving crazy to the hospital. We get to the hospital, and it was literally like one of those like a comedy movie or something. We come bursting through the doors. My partner is screaming at the top of his lungs, "Move out the way!" And we're sprinting into the hospital with this patient. The oxygen tank flies off the stretcher. It was a mad scene. Just one of those ridiculous scenes from a movie, very dramatic, over the top. We get them into the workup room. They work them up. I have no idea. This whole call was a blur to me. All I know is somebody called me a boy, and I think this man might have went into cardiac arrest on us. And I just kind of like froze. So now I'm outside doing my paperwork outside the room, and they're working up the patient, and I hear this loud commotion, loud commotion, and it's my partner. He's going ballistic in the emergency room. Security guards are escorting him out. I'm like, dude, what is going on? What happened? The daughter says to my partner, "Oh, you niggers killed my father." And remember I told you before, the guy said something about watch what you're doing, boy. And then topped with that was, so my partner didn't take kindly to that, and he went ballistic in the ER. And I mean, to the point where security had to come. I believe they called the police. We had to escort him out the ER. Very, very chaotic scene in the ER. And that just kind of like drained me. And that was one of those calls that, it was a deciding moment. It was like, all right, am I going to do this job or not? Because that's the kind of call that some people may quit after. Like, all right, I'm not dealing with this. I got this crazy partner. I got racist family members here, and it just wasn't a good mix. And it just, very combustible situation that definitely blew up. One night, in this call, I will never forget. This call is one that made me truly believe that there was a such thing as God and angels, and I'll tell you why. So we're driving. We picked up a call for an elderly female in the Howard Beach area of Queens. So we're driving through the area, bringing this lady to the hospital. She's very, very, very elderly. I'm in the back, of course, with the patient. My partner's driving. My partner, same guy, decides he needed to buy a pack of cigarettes right then and there. So he pulls this is like 3 in the morning. On a summer night. He pulls the ambulance over at a bodega, jumps out, says, "I'll be right back." Now I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? We have a patient in the ambulance. What are you doing? It's only going to be a second. I gotta get some cigarettes. There's a group of teens, I guess teenagers, young men, hanging outside the bodega. Okay? He runs in. These are a group of white males, right? He runs in, comes out. All of a sudden, he comes back to the ambulance. He's yelling and shouting and cursing, grabs a crowbar, and goes back towards the group. Now I'm like, all right, what the hell is going on here, and what is this? He's swinging the crowbar at the group. They're circling around him. I'm in the back with this lady. She's not in the greatest shape. And it's 3 in the morning. I'm in the back. Once again, you're still talking, I'm 19, maybe 20 again. Still my rookie year. And they surrounded him. And then somehow the back doors just swung open. I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. But there's like these 2 giant sanitation workers are there. And I'm like, what's going on? So I explain, I'm like, listen, this lady needs to get to the hospital. I don't know what's going on with my partner, but it looks like they're about to jump him. The sanitation workers, like 3 more show up and disperse the crowd, basically hold the crowd at bay and tell my partner to get in the ambulance and get out of here. He did just that, and we got out of there safe and sound. But I really thought at least he, if not both of us, were dead. But like I said, I don't know where those sanitation workers came from, but they definitely saved the evening. And, that's why I think I'm still here telling you the story today. So wherever they are, thank you guys very much. Greatly appreciate it. I had another partner later on. I guess I separated from that guy, whatever. I got another partner who was kind of a lover boy. He was older. Everybody was older than me anyway, but this guy was older. He had a wife. He had an Ivy League wife, and he had a girlfriend that was a doctor. And I remember that his girlfriend, doctor girlfriend, brought him a car, cash. And that was just something I always remembered. And I'm like, wow, you have a very, pretty wife, lovely child, young child, and Ivy League business corporate wife. You're my driver, basically. And why don't you just like chill out and what are you doing? But he was always, that's not what he was about. So I remember that kind of a cocky guy, kind of arrogant too. But so one day that same partner, we're at a hospital, and we're about to leave the hospital, and there's two young ladies at the elevator. Whatever reason they were upset. It's a hospital. There's a lot of reasons why somebody would be upset at a hospital. And we pressed the button to go into the elevator. I don't know what happened, but that partner, he and one of the young ladies, get into some words as they're passing each other. And we finally get down the hallway, and he yells back at her, something about, she said something like, oh, you wish you could have this. I don't know. I guess he was trying to flirt with her, and it went south. We get down the hallway. He says something to her like, oh, you probably got AIDS anyway. And this young lady charged down the hallway, and the two of them, she starts throwing punches at him, and I'm just begging him. This guy was also very well built. I'm like, please do not hit this girl. Do not do it. And they're in a fist fight at the elevator. We're in uniform. We're working. And he is about, going almost toe to toe with some very angry young lady in the hospital. You can't make these stories up. One of my favorite stories from my Metropolitan days. So I had another partner I'm working with. I think I was working overtime this day or whatever it was. It was probably not my day to work. So there was this one cool partner, younger guy. Once again, I think he was a driver at the time, and I was the EMT. But so I never drove ambulances. I never got to drive. I was always with a driver. So this particular partner, we're driving to our area, wherever, for the next call. Nice slow day, and he decides he needed to smoke a joint. So, he tells me, asks me, all right, you take the wheel. I'm going to go in the back here and, light this up. Okay, are you serious? Yeah, just, all you got to do is drive, down the street here. All right, no problem. Pull over, we switch seats. He goes in the back, he lights up. I think he's like cracks the back door and blowing it out the door, whatever. So we're driving a while. He's done. So now I guess he's high, right? He just smoked the joint. He gets in the front seat, the passenger seat. I'm still driving. So now I'm feeling a little confident. I've drove a nice little distance here. I'm pretty confident. I got this. I'm driving an ambulance. Once again, I'm probably 19, 20. I'm driving this ambulance for the first time. So we get to a light. The light starts to turn red. So I decide I'm going to take this light. I'm going to hit a little siren, hit the lights, hit a little siren, and get through the intersection. This whole thing must have been in like slow motion because I start to go through the intersection. I reach for the siren. I'm doing, so now you're reaching for a siren, you're reaching for the lights, you're trying to pay attention. It's not an easy thing. And I'm doing this, and I can see my partner in the chair next to me he raises up and he's like, no, stop. And bang, broadside collision. We broadside somebody's car in the intersection, major damage to our ambulance. So now we're sitting there. He's sitting there. This just happened. When you get in an accident and the horn keeps going and going and going. The whole scene. There's a crowd, and he's panicking. He's like, "Oh, I'm so dead." I believe we may have switched seats and said he was driving. I don't know. There wasn't really injuries, just definitely vehicle damage. We went back to the base, or got towed back to the base. Everybody knew the story. I pretty much think everybody knew what really happened. But yeah, my partner had to smoke a joint, and I totaled the ambulance. So. Now I am about 20 years old. I've been at Metropolitan almost a year. I told you my father is a retired EMS lieutenant from FDNY. Now, prior to FDNY EMS, it was called Health and Hospitals. Health and Hospitals Corporation ran it. It was run by the city's HHC. Okay? So my dad was there since then. He was there before I was born. All right? So I finally apply. I get into the academy. It was an 8-week academy. I'm very excited. I'm going to join the big leagues here, New York City EMS. And, it was kind of like, wow, this is cool. I'm following the path my dad was on. I remember as a kid, him bringing the ambulance by. Even he actually treated some of our friends when we were kids. One of my friends I grew up with got hit by a car on our street. He responded. We watched that. It was like, wow, watching your father, do stuff like that. Another friend of ours on the block broke his wrist. They came to our house. My father fixed him up, splintered him up, like he was that guy. So now it's my turn. So I get into the EMS Academy, and I'm extremely excited. This is it. I'm going to be like my dad, kind of, and get in there and get into the big leagues, right? The big leagues of EMS, New York City Emergency Medical Services. So I'm in the academy. I go through academically, not a problem. Great instructors, very tough, very strict. It's paramilitary, so it's like you're standing at attention when an officer walks into the room. Everyone has to stand at attention. You got to make a hole, if you will, for somebody to walk by if they're higher ranked than you. It was very regimented like that, and I was fine with that. I love that stuff. So now the big hurdle is the EVOC course, Emergency Vehicle Operations course. You must pass this in order to graduate the academy. It's like a week long you spend out there, and then the final day is testing day. You have to run through the course 3 consecutive times, and your average time of those courses must be 6 minutes. I believe it's 6 minutes in order for you to graduate, to pass EVOC and then graduate. Very intimidating, especially if you've never actually driven an ambulance. We're on the course throughout the week, going through the skills. So one day, my father, he was working. He comes out and visits the EVOC course. And apparently the EVOC instructors, didn't take too kindly to him coming out there. They must have felt he was trying to intimidate them, or that's what I heard, and push his weight around. I have no idea. I just figured it was a dad coming to see his kid in the academy, but whatever. So basically, they failed me out of the EVOC portion of the academy and kicked me out the academy the first time. I got right back into the second class, and the same thing happened again. Same instructors. And once again, I made it through everything. And this time I was like the last week of the academy. They bounced me out again. Now, I have seen and heard of people not passing it, graduating, and then being brought back to take it again and like remediate and take it and pass. But that wasn't the case with me. They kicked me out a second time. So you would think I would probably quit and go and try something else and give up. But nope, I went to the third class. This is the third consecutive academy class that I went into. Same instructors. Here we go again, right? Passed the academics, no problem. Great people on that side, skills, fine, down pat. Everybody knows my story at this point. And they're like, come on, you got to do this. So what I did this time was, my dad had a friend who was a lieutenant, another lieutenant, and we got access. Well, we actually rented a U-Haul, got access to the course, and I drove that course all night long, into the night, overnight, for hours and hours and hours. And I'm telling you, I drove this U-Haul probably till the wheels fell off. So now I get into the EVOC portion of the academy in my third consecutive class, and I crushed it. My time was 3 minutes and 30 seconds by the time I was done with all of my repetitions. So now I'm excited. The people in my class knew the story. They're excited for me. Everybody's excited for me. And the EVOC instructor who was running the testing just looks up from his clipboard, looks at me and goes, "Just so you know, speed kills," and walks away. And I'm like, you know, you're trying to have your moment that you finally made it over this hurdle, and that's what you have to say. Like, after what you guys put me through over some petty nonsense, you know, over threat of feeling intimidated because someone visited their son, that was your response to somebody, you know, overcoming something like that. So that was my introduction into New York City EMS. And I will also add, I have seen, you know, other classmates that I had who had parents, you know, with that were also on this job or PD who would pass by 1 second and barely make it, and they weren't driving any better than I was, but I didn't have the stopwatch, so I couldn't tell. But they were hitting cones just like I was, and they, you know, but hey, they passed, you know, and I would fail by 1 second both times. So, you know, I guess they sent their message, and then once I overcame that obstacle, you know, they were still a little angry about it, I guess. So whatever. I brushed it off and celebrated, and I graduated, and I made it to the streets. So kudos. When I graduated out of the EMS Academy, you fill out a sheet of which locations you know, your dream sheet of your top choices of where you would like to work. When I was coming out in that era, it wasn't uncommon for half of a graduating class to be swept up into communications and go into the communications division. And that's exactly what happened with my class. Top class 9103 is the class I graduated out of. Shout out to everybody from 9103, and also 9101 and 9102. Shout out to you guys too. You know, so I graduate and I got assigned to Coney Island Station. All right, Station 31 at the time. And my first partners I had were great guys. They were senior, you know, they had way more time on the job, obviously, than I did. And I was, so how it worked is there were 3 partners assigned to a unit. When one was off, the other 2 worked together. We worked 5 days on, 2 days off, 5 days on, 3 days off. So when I was off, the other 2 guys worked together, and you know, that's how you mixed it up. So it was always 3 partners made up in a unit, a crew. So the guys I worked with at Coney Island, they were great. Shout out to them. But we used to sit. Now, I just graduated out of the EMS Academy. It's the summer of '91. It's scorching hot. I got sent to Coney Island because my father was working, I believe at that time, out of Kings County, which is where I wanted to go, but I couldn't go there. So Coney Island was my only other choice, or the Bronx, Lincoln. They were sending people to Lincoln like crazy too. So I got Coney Island. Summer of '91 was the Crown Heights riots, so that was going on when I graduated. So I'm sitting down, I'm listening to the PD scanner at work. I want to get into the action. All my friends that graduated that are working out of Kings County are in the mill, you know, they're calling me, "Oh man, you know, it's crazy, the riots." You know, and I'm like, I'm in Coney Island sitting with these 2 guys under a tree in Marine Park, because that's what, you know, old timers, they sit under a tree and they turn off the radio and they wait, you know, for them to be called, and that's it. I wanted to, you know, buff jobs, jump on calls, but that didn't happen until I switched units, and then I worked with a younger guy, and I worked 31 Henry, pre-hashtag. It was 31 Henry, and we sat on Stillwell and Surf, which is where the Cyclone and where Nathan's is, in the middle of Coney Island. And yeah, things went from 0 to 100 very rapidly. It was very live out there. It was amazing. It was busy. It was, you know, you like trauma, you like all the drama, you like everything like that. It was all of that rolled up into one, and just 99-degree temperatures. So now the summer's over, and I finally get my transfer. I put in my papers for transfer. I transfer to Kings County, Station 33. I finally get there, and the first day at the station, the lieutenant doesn't look at me, looking down, that's doing what he's writing, whatever. Hey, good luck. You're working with Jason. Good luck. And that was it. So I'm like, well, who's this kid? Who am I working with? And everybody's just like, oh man, good luck. And that was it. Okay. Now I realized later he had a reputation for being reckless. He was fairly new, I guess. One of these hot-headed, gung-ho, running into trouble kind of partners. And I'm like, oh, great, thanks. This is first day I walk into the station. That's the first thing that was said to me. Okay. So we get a job, and we pull up to the scene, and there's cops everywhere. This is a summer night again, in Brooklyn, in Flatbush. Summer night, hot out, everybody's out. And, it's like daytime out there, except it's like 2 a.m. So we get there, and the police are holding a guy, like in the yard of a house, of an apartment, and there's a female smacking him in the face, and everybody's around just watching her slap this guy. So I guess that was a little street justice they were, allowing to happen, whatever. But I see he's a little bloody, and he's kind of wobbly, and that there's a big gash in his back. So apparently the neighborhood took out this street justice. I don't know what he did, okay, but they didn't take kindly to it. And back then, the garbage cans were made out of steel or metal. So somebody hit him in the back with one of those metal garbage cans, and I guess that's how he got the gash in his back. So he's bloody, he's wobbly. So I go get the stretcher, and then my partner was telling me, no, leave him alone. It's fine. The PD can walk him to the truck. Walk him to the ambulance. I'm like, I don't agree with this, but whatever. You're a senior guy. They start to walk him to the truck, and then under a street light is where our truck was parked. He gets to the ambulance, puts his hand up, and then he collapses against the truck. Smears blood all over the side of the truck. He's unconscious. The gash is so wide you could see everything inside of his back, like probably down to the spine. It was ridiculous, the gash. This guy is out now. Now everybody's scrambling, and I'm looking at my partner like, you see, idiot? Like I told you, let's just get the stretcher. So now I'm pissed. We get to the because this guy's going out of his way to not do anything for the patient and just accommodate everything that was happening and what PD was allowing to happen, and I wasn't really a part, into that. So we get to the hospital, and this was something weird that happened, and thinking about it, you see why. We get to the hospital, we're at Kings County at the trauma center, and then some officer comes up to me in the ambulance and knocks on the window. So I'm like, okay, what's up? Can I, what's going on? He says, oh, he's with Internal Affairs, and he wants to know what if I saw anything on that assignment that wasn't right. So, okay, I know I'm fairly new here, but I know for a fact that Internal Affairs is not going to show up 20 minutes after we get to the emergency room to find out if something, like, it doesn't work like that. So in my mind, I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, I didn't see anything. I don't know what you're talking about. So I didn't say anything about that. I think I did the right thing because I don't think that was Internal Affairs. I think they were just trying to feel out what the pissed off guy was going to say or do. Eventually that partner got fired for being, doing more reckless stuff. But yeah, that was one of my initiations into Station 33. But that is where I met one of my first mentors, the late Bill Monroe, who was my lieutenant, one of my lieutenants. We got really tight. He was definitely look out for me and give me advice and put me in the right direction. He would tell me what to look out for. And he was definitely a mentor. I would run errands for him when he was working. He would send me, go drop off some money at my house for my daughter, or go to the store, bring me back a soda. And it was great. He was a very, very good dude. And then one night he died in a tragic car accident, actually driving home from a birthday celebration, his birthday celebration. And that really hit me hard. I was kind of left numb from that day. I remember that night I got the call and I had to go to work. And that was like the first time I broke down and just crying uncontrollably that this happened. It was terrible. So they sent the CISM team, Critical Incident Stress Management team, to the station to help us grieve because everybody loved this guy. Everybody loved Bill. So I'm there. My eyes are red. I've been crying. The guy from the CISM team is talking to me, and then he says to me, "Hey, man, I know you're hurting about Bill, but if he were here right now, he would want you to get back on that truck and get back to work." And I looked at the guy, and I just shook my head, went to my car and drove off. And I went home for the day. I'm like, are you kidding me? Here's what made that worse to me was that about 2 weeks or so prior, the station dog had died. And one of the young ladies was upset about that. And they sent her home, But my mentor died in a car accident, not from being old like the dog died, from a tragic, unexpected car accident, and they're like, get on that truck and go to work. So you wonder why sometimes I had a chip on my shoulder. These things help to build you, I guess. To sum it all up, the time at Station 33 was priceless with experience, priceless people that I worked with, priceless friendships, great times, and just, stories that'll last forever, friendships that'll last forever, and we've all gone through a lot of different things together. And, like I said, rough start, but when ultimately it was great. This is the Lights and Sirens podcast with your host, Bernie Robinson. If you would like to be a guest on the Lights and Sirens podcast, email us at lights911sirens@gmail.com.